Every day, countless stray animals wander onto busy roads, their lives teetering between life and death. What happens next could be the difference between a tragedy and a life-changing rescue. By the roadside, a tiny cat lay curled up, trembling and covered in blood. It was clear the poor thing had been hit by a car, and one of its eyes was horrifically protruding. A kind-hearted woman passing by couldn't just walk away. She gently picked up the kitten and rushed it to the hospital, hoping that it would survive. The doctors knew the situation was grim. The cat's injuries were severe, with blood clots on the damaged eye and bleeding that wouldn't stop. There was even a chance it was bleeding internally, possibly from its lungs. To make matters worse, the frightened little creature lashed out in fear, scratching the doctor's hand. Despite the stress, the medical team got to work, carefully treating the injured eye and stopping the bleeding. Some suggested euthanasia, fearing the cat's condition was too severe, but the woman couldn't bear the thought. She held on to a fragile hope that it might pull through. By the next day, there was a small ray of hope. The cat had a bit more energy and began to meow softly. The doctor recommended surgery to reposition the eye as soon as possible. For now, it needed to stay under observation. The woman brought a can of food, worried it wouldn't eat, but to her relief, the cat managed to eat a little. Still, the road ahead looked long and hard. On the third day, the woman visited again, only to learn more about the extent of its injuries. The inside of the cat's mouth was completely torn, evidence of how hard it had been hit. She tenderly changed the bandages on its head and tried feeding it with a small spoon, but the kitten could only manage a few bites before giving up and crying in pain. Every day, the woman came back, offering soft words of encouragement. "Stay strong," she said gently. Her visits seemed to bring the cat some comfort. By the fourth day, the eye surgery was complete, and though the damaged eye couldn't see, it was now in place and looked better. The woman was relieved to see even the smallest signs of improvement. The trust between them grew. The cat, once timid and scared, now responded warmly to her voice. The doctors suspected he might have had an owner before, but sadly, he'd been neutered early, suggesting he had been abandoned. On the fifth day, the stitches were removed from his eye and a nasal tube was inserted so he could be fed more easily. Eating was still too painful with his cracked jaw, but the woman didn't give up. She started blending cat food into powder and even mixed it with beef to make it as nutritious as possible. With antibiotics, painkillers, and daily intravenous drips, the kitten was slowly improving. By the seventh day, there was a small but meaningful breakthrough. The nasal tube was removed. The kitten could finally eat on his own. He was still weak, but each day brought a little more progress. But would he ever fully recover? 10 days after the accident, the moment everyone had hoped for arrived. The woman brought the cat home. What once seemed like an impossible recovery became a story of incredible survival. This tiny cat, once left for dead on the roadside, now had a warm and loving home. Though he had lost one eye, his spirit seemed unbroken. Settling into his new surroundings, he cautiously explored his new home and even began to mingle with the other cats. He was still timid but no longer afraid. Under the woman's devoted care, he grew more confident each day. But the journey wasn't over yet. He needed regular medication and eye drops, and eating remained a bit of a challenge. But with so much love and patience, there was no doubt he would grow stronger. This little cat was so fortunate to meet someone so kind. Despite the odds, he got a second chance at life. His future now looked bright and full of love. In our next story, the day started like any other. A woman was driving down a quiet road when something up ahead made her heart sink. A dog was lying on the pavement, motionless. For a moment, she thought it was too late. But as she got closer, she saw a faint movement, a small shift, like he was barely still alive. His eyes were wide and filled with fear, yet he was oddly calm, perhaps silently begging for someone to notice him. The woman parked and approached carefully, wondering how bad things were. The dog's fur was dusty, but there was no blood and no visible injuries. Even so, the way he stayed still was worrisome. The woman bent down beside him and gently held his paw. The dog didn't resist. He just looked up with tired, trusting eyes. That look hit her in a way that can't be explained. Obviously, she couldn't just leave him there. Cars slowed as they passed, and soon people began stopping, assuming the woman was the one who had hit him. "I found him like this," she explained over and over until they understood. Once the confusion settled, the crowd dispersed, and the woman was left with him. He still hadn't moved, but his breathing was steady. She carefully pulled him off the road and onto the grass. He lay quietly, not making a sound. Even though he didn't seem seriously hurt, something felt off. He wasn't trying to get up, and his silence was unsettling. So the woman decided she had to take action. Picking him up as gently as she could, she carried him to the car. The dog didn't bark, whimper, or even struggle. He simply allowed himself to be placed on the seat. His quietness only deepened the concern. She drove the car straight to the nearest vet, but the clinic was closed. A wave of concern washed over her, and she parked the car and fixed her attention on the dog. After a while, the dog shifted slightly as if attempting to sit up. It wasn't much, but it was a sign of life, offering a glimmer of hope. Still, no chances were taken. When the clinic finally opened, the vet attended to him immediately. He conducted a thorough examination, checking for broken bones or hidden injuries. The dog remained incredibly still during the x-ray, even closing his eyes at one point, seemingly relaxing. The vet returned with reassuring news. There were no fractures and no visible signs of serious injury. He might just be scared, the vet said. They also noted his full stomach, suggesting he might have eaten recently, which could explain his lethargy. Relieved, the woman returned the dog to the spot where he had been found, with the thought that perhaps someone nearby was looking for him. He didn't appear to be a typical stray. He wasn't starving or scruffy. She left him there with the hope that he would find his way back to whoever might care for him. But that wasn't the end. A few days later, locals revealed that he was, in fact, a stray. He didn't belong to anyone. That changed everything. Thoughts of him lingered, wondering if he was safe, if he had enough to eat. Determined to help, the search to find him began. It wasn't easy. For 3 days, the search continued through the rain, asking anyone if they had seen him. Some people recalled spotting him, but no one knew his exact whereabouts. Just as hope began to fade, on the 5th day, there he was. Across the street, his tail wagged cautiously when he saw the woman who had saved him. A rush of joy filled the air. A call went out to him, but he didn't come right away. Instead, he darted around, playful yet hesitant, as though testing the situation. Kneeling down, the woman called softly, waiting patiently. Gradually, the dog inched closer, allowing a gentle hand to pet him. His wagging tail said it all. He remembered. This time there was no hesitation. He was scooped up and taken straight to the pet hospital. The dog was in desperate need of a bath, though the process turned into a bit of a struggle. He wouldn't sit still, squirming and shaking off the water, making the staff laugh despite the chaos. When the bath was finally done, he looked like a brand new dog. She bought a bright red leash, and just like that, he was no longer a stray. He was part of the family. The vet later confirmed that the dog was about 7 or 8 months old. Vaccinations and deworming medication were administered, though he cried during the checkup, his skittishness from life on the streets still apparent. With gentle words and a reassuring touch, he gradually began to calm down. He was named Buddy, a name that seemed to fit him perfectly. Before long, he was running around, wagging his tail, and staying close, as though they had been together forever. The once lost dog now had a home, and a new best friend had found his place in the world. Buddy's story is one of hope, kindness, and second chances. It serves as a reminder that sometimes one act of compassion is all it takes to change a life, both theirs and yours. Every life matters, so let's look out for stray animals and give them the second chance they deserve.